Well, hey Slingers, welcome back to another Wordslinger podcast, and today I'm talking to Marschall Runge. He's got a pretty grand title, but the important parts for this conversation is that he's an author of both fiction and nonfiction. We're going to be talking about the health industry and what's coming up and some other things that you're going to want to really tune in for, so stick around.
It's the Wordslinger podcast, where story matters. Build your brand. Write your book. Redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented pants optional, Kevin Tumlinson, the Wordslinger.
Wordslinger.
Well, welcome to the Wordslinger podcast. I am Kevin Tumlinson. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad that you're here. So this was an interesting conversation. I actually only had this conversation yesterday, so producing these in record time now. Actually, maybe it was 2 days ago. I'm not sure. I can never keep track anymore. There's too many things that happen, too much stuff going on. But this was a great conversation because Marschall is somebody who's he's kind of in an elevated position. And we talk about this in the interview. I won't spoil anything, but he's got a kind of a hefty role in sort of the medical field and in the sort of education side of things. We share some common ancestry here in Texas, which was great. Great to find out. Always good to meet fellow Texans, even if it's just in spirit at the moment. But anyway, one of the things that I was interested in with this, first of all, I love futurism. I love talking about like what's coming up, especially when it comes to technology. And on the health side of things, there's so much happening. And I've got personal stakes in some of this, you know. I mean, for instance, in this interview, I learned about a new form of pacemaker that I have been denied that I need to look into. That would be probably preferable to the one that I have. If you weren't aware, yeah, I have a pacemaker. I have a birth defect in my heart that went kind of undiagnosed until my late 30s. So I have a device. I'm also a type 2 diabetic, so we talk about that a little bit. So there's technologies and advances that are making life easier on people who have birth defects and illnesses and things like that. So this is a topic I'm keenly interested in myself, but the sort of futuristic aspect of it, especially talking about AI, which right now is the hot topic on everyone's lips. That's what everyone's talking about in all fields, even here in the world of writing and publishing. So we get into that, but one of the reasons I was looking forward to this beyond just that stuff was that Marschall was actually a thriller writer as well. So he's got this nonfiction book we're promoting, but he's also written a thriller novel, sort of, leaning on his medical knowledge. And I love talking to people who write in both lanes because there's a sort of, there's a balance that you have to strike there. Now, I've written fiction and nonfiction alike. In my career, I shift gears when I do that. What I can say is it's a different type of writing. Each time, it's a different approach, and we get into a little bit of that in the interview. So, hey, I've hyped this up enough. Let's not delay any longer. Let's jump right in to this chat with Marschall, and make sure you stick around on the other side for my note at the end. I'll see you there. Hey, it's Kevin Tumlinson here, and I want to talk to you about something that's made a real difference in my work over the years, and that is Pro Writing Aid. I've been using this for years. It's hands down the best assistive editing tool that I've found, and what I love most is that it works wherever I write. So whether I'm in Scrivener, Microsoft Word, Substack, or anywhere else, Pro Writing Aid is right there with me. And unlike other tools, I get control over the kind of suggestions it gives me, so there's no rigid rules. It's just smart, actionable feedback that's tailored to my writing. And the best part is that the team behind Pro Writing Aid actually cares about independent writers and creators. They're focused on helping individual creators like you and me, not just big enterprise customers. And that is, unfortunately, becoming a kind of rare thing these days. And that's why I'm proud to support them. So if you're serious about leveling up your writing wherever or however you write, go to prowritingaid.com and use the code KEVIN20 at checkout for 20% off of your subscription. That's prowritingaid.com, code KEVIN20. And trust me, you'll be glad you did. Well, I'm thrilled about this guest for a lot of reasons. The topic we're going to cover, we're going to span a little bit, and I'm kind of excited about that. But the topic we're going to cover is important. It's currently important, so it's ongoing importance. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But I'm also curious, Marschall, about your sort of dual nature as a writer, and I definitely want to discuss that. But we're talking to Marschall Runge today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kevin. Great to be on your show. Thank you.
You've got a more prominent background than most of the authors I end up talking to. What's your current title there where you are?
Well, I'm currently Dean of the Medical School at the University of Michigan and CEO of our health system.
So if anybody should know something about health, it should be you. Theoretically, should be you.
It's my everyday business, so hopefully I know something.
So the current book, I'm going to pop this up, The Great Healthcare Disruption, which I'm really interested in getting into. Big Tech, Bold Policy, and the Future of American Medicine. We definitely want to talk about that. Hot topics right now, especially considering the past 5 years or so.
Right.
But I also want to talk to you about, because you've got a fiction writing career kind of on the side, a little side hustle with a thriller novel. So I definitely want to talk about that. But let's get to the reason you came here, because you want to talk about the current book, right? The Great Healthcare Disruption. What's the premise here? What are we looking at?
Well, I got a call from Forbes Books. It's a Forbes book about would I write something about healthcare? And I said, sure. What do you want me to write? And they said, whatever you want. So what I tried to do was pick out 10 topics that I thought were ones that are really important for how we think about healthcare. And to give you a little snippet of it, I start off talking about what I think is well known to anybody who watches the news or reads about healthcare, and that is that healthcare in the United States is really expensive.
Yeah.
And if you look at the amount of whether you look at the amount of our gross domestic product, which is 17 or 18%, or if you compare us to other countries, the cost of healthcare per capita, per person, is the highest in the world. Mm. So now I do think, you have to put this in the context that I'm a doctor and I've been involved in healthcare my whole life. But I do think that if you're really, really sick, I'd want to be in the United States.
Yeah.
Because we do critical care so well. But on the other hand, if you look at another metric, which is around primary care and preventive health, we in the United States, if you look at those same countries where we're more expensive, we have the fewest primary care doctors per 1,000 people.
Oh, wow.
And I think we don't do well in preventive health, and we could do a whole lot better on preventive health. Yeah. And so it's sort of a dichotomy there. Spend a lot of money on health, but we don't do so much on trying to help keep people healthier.
Right.
And so I think so I talk about that, and then I talk about things that are coming along in healthcare. And healthcare is, all of us these days, we get used to being consumers. We get used to being able to order things online and have them delivered to our front door, or call in DoorDash and not even have to leave the sofa. Not a great thing, but convenient.
Part of the problem is we're not leaving the sofa enough as it is, right?
Exactly. So healthcare is also needs to meet the people we provide healthcare for. They're in a consumer environment.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I know that if I want to see my internist, generally I see him once a year, I got to make that appointment months and months in advance.
Yeah.
And if you need to see somebody right away, it's hard. So there are entities that are trying to fill that gap, make healthcare available 24/7.
That's what's interesting. That's what's interesting about being in a capitalist society is that, there's an opportunity. And so somebody's going to figure out a way to capitalize on it.
Right.
And you're right.
Right.
My general practitioner, like I have to make an appointment a year out. And I just got a message from them saying that he's retiring. So now I have to find a whole new GP.
Yeah.
Which wasn't easy in the first place. So you mentioned this, and this is something I've thought about. I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, which wasn't the most fun. It was on my birthday last year, which wasn't the most fun birthday present, but it changed my life in some positive ways. But I immediately ended up ordering these little wearable blood sugar monitors, and I just got them online, sent in the mail. Everything goes through my phone. I mean, that's amazing to me.
Yes.
Are you seeing trends like that? Like, how indicative of trends is something like that?
Well, Kevin, that's interesting because what you did is what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a tremendous future in what I'll call wearables, whether it's your blood sugar monitoring device or whether I've got an Apple Watch they suckered me into buying that I can track anything I want to track.
Right.
But what we're learning is that, first of all, people want that. Now, they range. Some people, if you talk to some people, they'll say, oh, yeah, I measure all this stuff. I write it down. I keep a notebook. I can't do that. But on the other hand, the wearables can be very valuable. So they can be valuable at a baseline level and detecting. Many of them will detect if you're having an irregular heart rhythm, like atrial fibrillation, a common thing. You can see how much you're getting your heart rate up if you're exercising. Many of them can help you determine if you have sleep apnea, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So I think they're powerful. And then in some other areas, some of the more sophisticated wearables are capable of detecting early people who maybe have a history of depression when they're getting depression, getting depressed. So I think they'll end up being very helpful in behavioral health or in mental health. So they're going to, I think we'll see much, much more of this. And there's a lot of innovation in that area.
That's really interesting. I mean, yeah, you're right, because I don't think I've even heard about that with, something that basically you're saying there's an app for that to detect depression. That's really interesting.
Yes.
What do you think? I mean, is that sort of a natural outcome because as you mentioned, like there seems to be a shortage of medical professionals right now. Or we're just, the system is overtaxed at least. Is that why we're seeing the rise of these technologies? Is that fueling that?
I certainly think it's contributed to it.
Yeah. Money is the other reason. But
yes. Everybody has an app that they want to sell.
Right.
I wish I could write an app, but there's some good ones out there. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, those that are best received will do pretty well financially. So if you've got entrepreneurs who listen on your show, they may already be doing some of these things. Yeah. I think that another interesting aspect of this is that you mentioned shortage of healthcare providers, and I mentioned that as well. So that is a real problem in the United States, particularly around primary care, general practitioners, family medicine doctors, et cetera. And part of that is with the pandemic, during the pandemic, I think so many people in healthcare just got burned out. And a lot of people who I know well just decided, hey, I'm just not going to do this anymore. And so now there's another area that I think is just fascinating, and I don't know where it's going to end up, is the advent of AI in healthcare. Yeah. And I'll be interested in what you think about it. Because I look at this every single day. Some prognosticators say, oh, we won't need so many doctors and nurses because of AI. Other ones say, well, what I do believe is AI can reduce the workload tremendously for
That's what I think. Yeah.
doctors, nurses, and healthcare
I
providers.
have a friend whose wife, the three of us were in New Orleans recently, and she was saying that she was having a problem with her tailbone, she said. And so she described it to ChatGPT to find out what it could possibly be so that when she went to her doctor, they could zero in on it faster because she'd already been to several doctors and couldn't get, relief for this. They couldn't
Right.
figure out what was wrong. So ChatGPT actually gave her like a list of possible problems and they were able to track it down and find and help her. So that's the way I see AI shaping medicine, frankly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an incredible thing if you mess around with Chat GPT, as I do too much time.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. I'll tell you another interesting thing about AI, Chat GPT in particular. I don't know if you have ever requested to get your medical records, but if you do, it's either a stack of papers, an inch thick,
Yeah.
or it's a bunch of digital things, and it's hard to make heads or tails of it.
Mm-hmm.
If you take that, make a PDF of it, drag it over into ChatGPT and say, give me a 2-page summary
Yeah.
of where my risks are and what medications I'm on, it does it in like a minute.
Yeah.
Where you could try to plow through that for 2 hours and not get as good information. So it's astounding.
Yeah.
There's another part of AI that I think is already helping a lot of healthcare providers, and it's called ambient AI. Have you heard that term?
No.
So what ambient AI does, imagine that you're a doctor and I'm your patient, and it's recording everything that you ask me. We use it here. We have to, in Michigan, we have to ask everybody, is this okay with you if we do
Mm-hmm.
this?
Yeah.
And what it does is it captures our conversation, and it doesn't just transcribe it. It creates a very high quality medical note. So after you've finished seeing me as a patient, rather than having to spend 15 or 20 minutes later writing a medical note or typing it in, you'll get this medical note printed out in a minute. And of course, you have to look at it carefully and make sure it doesn't have errors in it. But that in itself can save a busy physician a couple of hours a day.
Right. Yeah. I could absolutely see that being like a critical use actually for
Yeah.
and I'm not a doctor, but the things I do, it's amplified my ability to do everything I do, in terms of like the podcast and things like that. I was telling somebody that it used to take me about 4 hours to produce a show with an interview. If I did an interview, and I'm not even including the interview time, I'm just saying like I've got the footage, I've got everything, I got to record my part of it, and then putting it all together was about a 4-hour process, getting from start to finish, and I can do the entire thing now in under 20 minutes.
Wow.
And that's
That
all
is
because of
amazing.
AI.
Yeah.
So the book specifically calls out the future of American medicine, and I guess we can safely say that AI is probably going to be a part of that. But what are some other things that you see coming when it comes to our healthcare system?
Well, I think that I had mentioned before, and I'll mention it again. I think we really need to figure out how we emphasize of health, because the thing that's going to decrease the cost of healthcare in the United States is if we're healthier. We don't have to.
Yeah.
And if rather than having no idea what's going on and going to the hospital when you're really sick,
Right.
a lot of that's preventable. So I think that's part of it. Also, I think there are huge advances occurring in technology.
Mm-hmm.
So, give you a couple of examples. One I mentioned in the book is a guy who was a swimmer who started passing out. Turned out he needed a pacemaker. But when you get a pacemaker, you get an incision here in your chest, and you certainly can't swim for a couple of months. But he wanted to try the latest and greatest pacemaker, which is a pacemaker that's put in. It's about the size of a nickel, and it
Really?
actually less than a nickel, more like the size of a dime. It goes directly in the heart. You put it in with a catheter. There's no scar to heal up, and so he did that, and this guy was back swimming within 2 days.
Oh,
So, these technological advancements, it's like a computer, it's
yeah.
what they call those, the Cray supercomputers used to be
Yeah.
as big as a house. And,
Right.
and now on our laptop, we have more power than that.
See,
So that's one innovation.
I have a pacemaker.
Oh, do you?
And I have a scar. And I recently, like a year or so ago, had to go back under to have the
Get the
generator
battery
replaced.
Yeah.
And so, so that would have been nice to know that I could have gotten a nickel-sized. Maybe it would have scared me a little and embedded in my heart, but I'd have taken that. I'd have taken the risk.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
Well, and then there's all this new technology in both drug development.
Yeah.
Some of that being gene therapies.
Yeah.
So there's an increasing emphasis on using genetic therapies. Generally, these are for children who have rare diseases, but they can take a child that, normally with their inherited disease might only live to be 3 or 4 years old, or would have health problems their whole life, replace that defective gene. And this has been done now in several different diseases.
There was a story just recently. Yeah.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. I saw. An infant they used CRISPR tech to do some gene replacement. Yeah, that's really cool.
So that's cool.
Yeah, all that is just. We could probably sit here and geek out about the future of medicine. I'm very, I'm not a medical professional in any stretch of the imagination. It's the one field I never went into. If you check the rest of my resume, I went into a whole lot of different things, but I have a fascination about all that, especially as the advances make it more sci-fi ready.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to ask you though, because you've obviously in your field, writing of this kind, and we'll call it nonfiction writing, is kind of part and parcel with what you do. But you've also written fiction. I'm kind of curious, like how you manage to shift gears between the two and balance those two things. Like what do you see as the differences between writing a novel and writing a nonfiction book such as this one?
Well, very, very different.
Yeah.
And the novel I have published, which is called Coded to Kill, is it's around medical themes. So I know a lot about medical themes.
Right.
But there are a few things that are just, for me, liberating. I mean, you've written a lot of fiction, but I find it so liberating because in my day-to-day life, I have to be sure that what I'm saying is correct.
Yeah.
And that I can validate it. And there's been a study. In fiction, you can just make up whatever the heck you want.
Right.
And it's so much fun.
Yeah.
This started, I had a patient, it took me forever to write this book, but I had a patient a long time ago. I'm a cardiologist. He had he could have been a character in a Grisham novel, a John Grisham novel. He was a down and out attorney, gotten on alcohol and lost his family. And so one day he says to me, and he had heart problems. He said, "You know John Grisham?" And I said, "I don't think so. Is he a patient here?" He said, "No, you dummy. He's an author." He said, "I'm going to bring you a book." So he brought me The Firm. And so my mistake number one is, first of all, I love John Grisham.
Yeah.
And second of all, I thought to myself, I can write like that. And
that's how it starts.
That turned out to be wrong. But it led me to start. I went to a writing course. It's just a local writing course, and talked to some people. And I took me really over 10 years to write that first novel.
Yeah.
I'm working on another one now, and I think I'll be able to do better than 10 years.
Yeah. Once you've done it once, it's the 4-minute mile, once you've done it the first time, it's not that big a deal, and you'll get faster and faster until one day you'll write one in a day, like some fools.
Yeah. Don't know about that, but
don't recommend it. Yeah, so that's what's in, and you play to your specialty, which is makes it a lot easier to do something like that. Did you find yourself, I know you're saying you can make up whatever you want, but I mean, did you end up doing any research at all for the novel?
I did. So I did research. Um, this will sound a little bit morbid, but the
I'm braced for it. Let's do it.
okay. The premise of this novel is that there's some uh, malevolent people who have figured out how to crack into this great electronic medical record, and not only do they want to dig up dirt on people, but they want to be able to kill people. And it turns out, and you obviously know a lot about these things. It turns out that I'd never heard the term the Internet of Things and how
Oh yeah,
everything's connected to everything.
yeah,
And so what I learned was that you could potentially get into an electronic medical record, and then you could change parts of the person's history, or you could give them the wrong drug.
right,
And so that led me to uh, read a lot about these uh, people that sometimes they're called the angels of death, who feel they have like a godlike complex, and they feel they're doctors or nurses, and they're going to kill patients because I don't know what they're thinking, but
they've got
they're
their reasons.
they've got their reasons. And so I got reading about all of those people, and so my wife one day said, "What are you reading about?"
Yeah,
And when I told her, she's like, "Have you lost it? Are you thinking about doing that?" I said, "No, no, no. It's about the novel." But there's a very famous um, physician named Michael Swango,
hmm,
who was one of the worst of these people,
yeah.
who now lives in Colorado in a supermax prison. Um, but he just went around and gave people potassium, and you can give people an injection of potassium, and uh, it'll kill them. It'll make their heart stop.
Yeah.
Uh, why he did that, who knows?
Yeah. No, that's what makes these stories interesting is you it's almost better to not know the motive for the reader. It's almost better to never learn exactly why they're doing that. If you're trying to prosecute the guy, it becomes a little different, you may still never know, but those are the interesting
Right.
stories. Yeah, I believe me, I pay a lot of attention to the whole Internet of Things concept and the dangers involved with that. But my life dependent on this device that has Wi-Fi that's in
Right.
my chest. So if I'm ever,
Well, I don't know if you remember some years ago. I think it was Dick Cheney who had to get either a pacemaker or a defibrillator, and I only read about it later. But they were so worried about somebody being able to
yeah,
hack into his pacemaker
yeah,
and or defibrillator and cause it to malfunction. Um, and that was feasible.
yeah, I do. I recall that. I
Scary.
remember hearing about that. I think that was before I actually had my own device, so I may not have been quite as concerned about it at that point. I'm not sure. I don't remember. So yeah, so you're what was there anything? Here's what happens to me. I'll write something that I thought I was just making up out of thin air, and then it turns out I'll get 100 people email me to say that what I never knew about this, but when I went and looked into it, it was fascinating, and it turned out to be a real thing that I somehow stumbled onto. Have you noticed anything like that with what you wrote?
I have. I wish I could say 100 people contacted me, but um, no, there's some things that I just kind of made up, and I've had several of those that were in this novel that people said to me, "Wow, I read about that, and that can really happen." I'm like, "Whoa, I didn't know
Yeah.
that could really happen."
See, I think you're tapping into something though because you have this background, right? And you're an expert. And so you tapped into that while writing. And so I think your brain just makes logical leaps when
Yeah,
you're that.
maybe
Yeah. So
that'd be a
that's
first for me, for my brain to make a logical leap, but strange things have happened.
Oh, I think you're shining me on right there. So interesting. So you say you're working on another novel.
Yes.
I take it you're not quite at a point where you want to talk about it.
No, I'll talk about it.
All right, let's do it. What's the new one about?
Well, the new one is about the general concept is there are a bunch of people who want to either live much longer or even reverse aging.
Yeah.
And I got interested in this because there are now a bunch of biotechs that are focused on reversing aging. And when you look at who's supported them, one of the more recent ones, Altos, was funded by Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates. And they started off with a $3 billion investment. And I thought, wow, this is crazy. And so then I started reading more about it, and there are some fascinating people out there. There's a guy whose name is Brian Johnson. Have you ever heard of this guy?
Yes, I have.
So I knew somebody, a friend of mine's son worked for Brian Johnson when Brian Johnson had his I guess he had a software company or something he made all his money in. And so then I looked at him online, and he has this website that's called what is it? Not the Blue Zone. It's something, and he tracks everything he does, and he shows pictures of himself. Shows pictures of him lifting weights with his 18-year-old son. He's in his late 40s, and man, the guy looks good. But what I found is an interesting theme with these people. Some of them take tons of nutraceuticals and pills and things, but there are a few themes. So everybody who's talked about this talks about how important sleep is.
Yeah.
And being very regular about your sleep, going to bed at the same time, getting the same amount of sleep. And for somebody, I don't know about you, somebody who hasn't paid enough attention to their sleep, I'm thinking, oh man, I could do that.
Yeah.
Then they talk about healthy eating, which I certainly could do better at.
Yeah.
But then they get off into other things. Clearly, some of it's genetic. This blue zone concept is kind of interesting, where there are 10 or 12 of these blue zones where people seem to live. A lot of people live to be 100 years old.
Yeah. It's really fascinating. My wife has gotten me to watch and read quite a bit about
is that right?
The blue zones. Yeah. So that's a big topic in the Tumlinson house. So, and we're trying
I would think Liberty Hill would be in a blue zone, except for the barbecue and Mexican food.
Yeah, I'm about to say, I don't know how blue zone, all the barbecue and Mexican food is, but yeah. And, here we are, we're 20 minutes outside of Austin, which is basically one of the barbecue capitals of the world.
Right.
So yeah. But she's interested. I mean, she's interested in it, and I agree with her as, they did that model town where they made the town a blue zone. Like they just got the whole town on board. About that. Yeah. The author of that book, The Blue Zone or whatever, I forget his name, but yeah, they actually did this as an experiment. They went to an American town. I think it's actually in Michigan.
Really?
I think so. And I'll have to look this up. People are going to be fact checking me right along with this, but I know it's somewhere in the United States, but they worked with the town to create basically that blue zone lifestyle. More walking, eating a specific kind of diet, telling them the range of things that are in that diet. So, yeah. And I think they revisited it 10 years later or something. I mean, it's been going for a while.
Oh, I'd love to read about that.
Yeah. I think there's a documentary on Netflix you should watch that talks about that and everything.
I'll look for it.
Yeah.
When I was working on the great healthcare disruption, I got interested in these countries where people live a really long time. They have a very long, healthy life expectancy. And so one of those was Singapore. So it blew my mind about Singapore. So, very different environment than we live in. But they made it so expensive to drive. So the driver's license
Yeah.
in Singapore can cost $100,000.
Yeah.
And then they charge heavy taxes on what we'd call junk food or
Right.
high ultra purified food products, and they take that money and then they subsidize better food. So they have people that are walking, they have people that are the best food costs the least,
Yeah.
and
They've got all these like workout centers all over that city.
all over. I've never been there, but I mean, it sounds
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And they're among the very highest. They have among the very highest average healthy life expectancy in the world,
Yeah.
and they attribute it to some of these things.
Yeah. Yeah. They're just, yeah. And these are ultimately, I know that here in the US, like the complaint is that it's expensive, it's difficult to implement, you know, but it can be done. And we've got examples of it. Yeah. Well, hopefully that people get on board. I mean, we've got a whole conversation happening right now around health in the U.S. So hopefully that's having a positive impact and doing some
for
positive
sure.
things. So, well, that's fantastic. I'm glad you're working on that. I'm going to be interested in you and I talked briefly just before the call because I've also got a book that involves immortality that's being plotted and planned right now. Probably not in the same vein as what you're doing, but it does involve archaeology.
Yeah. So the premise of this book is the one I'm working on is that there's something in common about these people over millennia who lived to be such an old age.
Yeah.
So one of them is Ramses II, who apparently lived to be 90 years old back in ancient Egypt. Another one that people would tell me about this or I'd read about it. Michelangelo, you know, the famous painter, painted this ceiling in the Sistine Chapel. So that guy lived, and he was in the 1600s, lived to be almost 90 years old.
Yeah.
And I talked to a friend of mine who's an archaeologist, and his theory was that, interesting theory, that a lot of these people of various eras, one way or another, used hallucinogens, and
Right.
that was turning on these what are called epigenetic factors that might make them live longer.
Yeah.
So I went from what might be fact to total fiction.
Yeah. As you do.
I didn't write an outline for the first book, and I think that's part of what took me forever. But so I have written an outline this time.
You should
Only
look
about 3
into. You've probably already heard about this, but the stoned ape theory of the rise of consciousness, and it's the. And
what did you call it?
It's called the stoned ape theory. And the idea was, and I think some of it's been debunked, but it's a good one to kind of, because some of it has not. Some of it has actually been proven, and I forget the name of the guy who did this. It'll come to me later, but his theory was that consciousness may have arisen because when early man was basically migrating and hunting and gathering and for survival, they would have oxen and other animals. And from the dung that was dropped, mushrooms would grow, and these happen to be psychedelics.
Hallucinogenic.
Yeah, and so the theory is that early man, before they were intelligent in any way, would eat these, have a trip basically, and expand their consciousness, and it evolved us into what we are today. And there's a couple of lines of thought. Like one of those has been disproven, was that it might have had some sort of genetic impact. But the other, which seems much more plausible, is that it just opened their mind to the possibilities of things. And they already had the capabilities, but then consciousness arose from this new awareness that they had. That's the theory I subscribe to. So anyway,
so I wrote that down. I'm going to read about the stoned apes.
Yeah, do that. I think that's it's an interesting look. There's all kinds of conspiracy theories and other things that get tied into that, but because the CIA used microdosing of LSD and things like that. And so, there's a whole lot of that stuff that gets tied in with it, but it's a fun ride to take if that's the kind of thing you're interested in.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
You got it. Well, I can't wait to see that book. I've got a copy of The Great Healthcare Disruption, and I'm going to definitely get my hands on a copy of Coded to Kill. What else should I read of yours? What should I be putting in my brain?
Oh, I don't have anything else out there.
Okay.
Although, it would be fun to get back together with you, and we could, I'd be happy I'd love to have somebody take a look at some of the writing I'm doing about immortality. And since you're interested in that,
I got a book of my own. Yeah, well, we can talk. We can chat. That'd be a fun chat. All right. Well, we need to wrap up. We're at our time. Where can people find more about you and your books online?
Well, I have a website. Imagine that. I mean, I'm like 100 years
if you
old.
don't these days.
Yeah, really. Excuse me. So my website was developed by Forbes Books for the Great Healthcare Disruption, but it's got both books on there. And the URL is DR for doctor. It's all one word. DR Marschall Runge, spelled like my name is, MARSCHALLRUNGE. So DR Runge is all one word, .com.
Okay.
And if you go to that website, you can probably find more than you want to know about me.
All right. That will appear in the show notes for everybody listening and watching. So make sure you check that out. And there'll also be some other links in there. So go and find that. Marshall, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, man. And I know you've got big, important stuff to do, much more important than sitting on a podcast with little old me. So thanks for coming around.
This is far more important than anything I'll do for the rest of the week. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all that medical stuff, far less important. All right. Well, thank you for being on. Everybody else, thank you for tuning in and being a part of the Wordslinger podcast. And make sure you stick around for the note at the end. That's sure to be medically relevant, we'll say. And we'll see you on the other side. Take care.
Thank you, Kevin.
I've always believed life's too short for boring stories. So I write the kind of books I'd want to read. Action-packed, fast-paced fiction. Adventure stories with characters you'll wish you could hang out with. And twists you'll never see coming. From ancient mysteries to modern-day thrills, my books take you on a wild ride. And trust me, I've got plenty of rides to choose from. So if you're ready to escape into a world of danger, discovery, and intrigue, it's here waiting. Find your adventure at kevintumlinson.com/books. Not responsible for sleepless nights.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that chat with Marschall Runge, and I hope that you got some inspiration out of it, and motivation. Maybe there's a lot to that. I love, as I said in the opening, I love talking about this stuff and sort of speculating about where things are going based on where they've been. I actually make a living doing that in a way. The way I operate, I take in a lot of information from a lot of different fields, but particularly I'm interested in, archaeology, history, science, specific aspects of those things as well. I've been studying quantum mechanics for a large chunk of my adult life. I couldn't sit down and do the math. I couldn't sit down and, prove or disprove theories. I'm not at that level, but I have a sort of layman's grasp of a lot of the concepts, and I end up talking about and writing about that stuff all the time. And the same is true for archaeology, specifically anthropology, studying humanity, our culture. In a way, so my character Dan Kotler from my archaeological thriller series is sort of we have a crossover. I wouldn't say that there's no one-to-one for us. Like, he's not me on the page. But a lot of his interests came from me originally. I'm the origin of his interests in his fields of study. Because that's what he's got PhDs in both those topics. It's one of those scenarios, by the way, and I've talked about this before, where I'm writing a character that I consider to be much smarter than I am, which is a trick. I mean, it's a party trick, really, because, you know, it's kind of easy. It's almost like being an armchair quarterback. I have an idea. I do some research, or I call on things that I already know, and I write the story. But because I'm in control of the pace at which that story is written, I can go and do some spot research, do a little supplemental research, and bring in ideas. So people ask me about this stuff in interviews sometimes, like, you know, how do I do the research? And the answer is, like, there's no one methodology at work here. I give all kinds of answers to that question, and it usually comes around to the fact that, like, I just sort of absorb things as I go. I take there's a game. I can't remember what it's called. There's a game about this big ball that rolls around, and it's sticky, and it starts picking up things, people and cars and trees and things like that. That's kind of the way I do research. I'm this ball rolling through the world, and I whatever interests me sticks to me. And it kind of goes, you know, into the gumball. And then when it's time for me to kind of come up with an idea or expand on a plot or whatever, I've got all these pieces that I've picked up as I roll through life. And that allows me to, I don't know, I start putting things together. I synthesize those ideas. And it's that synthesis that becomes the plots and becomes the plot twists and becomes the reveals and all the things, the stuff that Kotler has to deal with, or any other character I write has to deal with. It all comes from that. The revelations, the secrets, the mysteries, the histories, science, all of it. And then what I do is, okay, like, I've picked up this piece and I've married it to this other piece, but I need a little more information about both, and so I go online, or I read a book, or I watch a movie, or you know, something, and to inform more of that. AI has helped a lot with this, because while I don't use AI to actually do any writing, and I've attempted, I'm going to talk about this next, but pardon me, I've attempted to use AI to help me with outlining, and it just kind of bombs, and I'll explain why in a minute, but AI has been helpful in helping me. I treat it like a writing assistant. Go and find me this. Go and find me that. Tell me, where can I find more information about this? Include some links so I can go verify stuff. Because, you know, what I'm writing isn't crucial, critical, doesn't have to be 100% accurate. But it does help when it is. And so I strive for some authenticity and accuracy in that. So I don't use AI to help me with any actual writing. Every now and then I'll say, hey, how would you describe blank? Maybe it's something I've never encountered before, and I want a good explanation for it, and it'll give me something, and 100% of the time I have to rewrite it, but it does help me get a grip on what that setting looks like, or what if there's an artifact or something that I've never laid eyes on and I'm having trouble finding. I used to just Google this and just kind of find whatever I could and piecemeal it together, and that would take hours to do. And I can do that much faster now with AI. So even though I don't use it to actually do any of the writing, sometimes it helps me to figure out what I need to write. So that's been helpful. That's what I think AI is for, honestly. We did a story on the Writers Inc. podcast recently about an author who accidentally left part of her AI prompt in the finished printed manuscript. And she was asking the AI to rewrite something in the voice of another popular author. And I have strong feelings about this. Like, I really have this opinion that if you're using the AI to do the writing, I don't see the point. There is something to be said for if you can churn out a bunch of books, you potentially make a lot of money because, there there are readers out there who are just voracious and they can't even get enough. And so if you can, if you can meet their demands with a heavy, fast supply, then there could potentially be some money to be made here. But it's a dead end, because the industry itself is starting to kind of crack down on this sort of thing. Not even out of there's some of us in this world who feel like this is like an ethical violation or something. I'm an oddball in that I don't necessarily see it this way. First of all, I don't see AI as stealing anything from anyone. I'm an odd man out on that opinion. But unless it's literally word for word repeating something that was written by someone else, it's not plagiarism. Concepts can't be patented or protected by copyright, and the concepts and ideas are not IP. So anyway, I don't want to get off on that tangent. Some of you may disagree. If you do, feel free to say something to me, because I have been known to change my mind about topics like this. But the way I see AI kind of shaping up, actually, the thing that offends me as a writer is, one, if you're going to call yourself a writer, then you should be doing the writing. You can be a story crafter, I guess, if you've got the prompts, if you're doing the prompts and you're shaping it. But my big hang up is, if you're going to use a tool like AI to create something, my big hang up is, why would you use just the straight up what the AI produced and not touch it at all? Because then it's just, there's no part of you in it. To me, that's the sort of factory mindset, the sort of factory line mindset, assembly line, production. You could do that. I've seen publishers, well before AI came along, generative AI kind of took over some of this, but I was watching in my industry, in self-publishing, there were groups that were doing a kind of, assembly line method, where they were bringing in authors, kind of feeding on their dream and their hopes, saying, look, you've got this much time to write this. It must be this many words. You must do this outline, turn it in, get it approved, edit it to our requirements, and that they would just produce these books as rapidly as possible, because that was the model. That's always been the model. Nothing wrong necessarily with that. And I've seen a lot of people come out of that model, break out, and finally go do their own thing in their own way. Never was for me. I had plenty of opportunities to do it, got asked to do it. There was someone who tried to purchase my science fiction early on, but they wanted me to rewrite every word of it, break it up, make it more books, shorter books, and so I ultimately passed. So my take on this is, if you're going to use AI to help you with producing things, if you're going to wear the label of writer or designer or videographer, producer, director, whatever, do the actual work, even if the AI is standing in as a sort of resource and employee of yours. You should be the one ultimately that shapes that thing, not just dumping out whatever AI produced and calling it yours. That's the part that irks me. That's the part that I find offensive. And maybe there's an argument for this. I'd love to hear it. If you have an argument that supports doing that, and makes that somehow moral and ethical, then fine. It may not be an argument of morals or ethics. It may just simply be, I don't know. I find it to be hypocrisy. Like you're claiming, you're putting your name on something that you didn't actually produce. You're a fraud. Is, I guess, what it comes down to for me. So I've never done it. While I use AI extensively in all the things that I create, this show gets touched by AI. I do, and it's helped me a lot. I don't know. I don't remember if we talked about this in the interview or if it was just something Marschall and I talked about after the fact. But this show used to take me about 4 hours to produce, and because of AI, it takes me under 20 minutes most of the time. That doesn't include the sitting down and doing the recording. Doing the interviews and or sitting and facing the camera and talking to a microphone. That stuff takes as long as it takes. And could I, fake that with AI? These days, yeah. I mean, it would not be difficult at all. It's getting easier. Let's just put it that way. The stuff with like VO and all that, where people are creating stand-up interviews and things. So I could potentially AI this entire show, but that's not the point of it, right? The point was for me to come along and create things that are coming from me, and that's what you, as the audience, that's what you're tuning in for. I think maybe you just want pure content. You just tell me. I'm not changing the way I do anything, but it'd be good to know. That's the reason I write my own books. Every word of every book that I publish came from me or was at least shaped by me. There's nothing that I copy and paste, just purely copy and paste into anything. I've done some things in outlines that I copied and pasted and more or less left the way they were. And then inevitably I loop back and edit and change and reshape that. And it's never anything that goes into the book. It's always just prompts basically for what I'm going to write. Outlining's new to me. So this is part of a process of me learning how to implement it in my regular writing. And I'm enjoying it. I'm growing in this. AI has enabled me to do this in a way that I found intimidating prior to. But AI's ideas can be terrible. So let me give you that story. So I'm fresh off of finishing the draft for the book that J.D. Barker and I are doing. And I had to outline that. And it was grueling. I mean, I did not use AI for that outline. I did everything right out of my head. Shaped it, did everything. And I think I maybe overthought a lot of it, but it was a great exercise because what it did was, first it showed me I could do it. It's like running the 4-minute mile. I think I may have mentioned this in the interview. It was the 4-minute mile. Once I did it, well, now I know I can do it. So there's no hang up now. I can just do it. But I want to get better at it. I want to improve at it. So that's what I'm doing now. And so I have a method of writing in Scrivener where if you're not familiar with Scrivener, there's something called the binder, and there's folders, and then there's like these files. And there's different ways to handle this, but the way I organize my work is I create a folder that is a chapter. So that's chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. And within that folder, each file is and I think they have different terminology for these things in the in Scrivener, but to me it makes sense to call it a file. Each one gets numbered. So I've talked about this before, but like if I'm in chapter 5, then the first scene is 5-1, and the second is 5-2, 5-3, etc. And there could be, at this point, the way I'm handling scenes, I mean, there could be dozens, 20, 30 scenes in a chapter, depending on how I'm handling it. But having them numbered like that has been helpful for me in organizing. And if I decide, it does create a problem for me if I'm deleting a chapter and now I got to renumber all the chapters or whatever. There's no easy way for me to do that, but it's part of the process and I've accepted it. And I really don't do that very often. I've done that. I did that a lot with ARC Initiative, which we'll talk about later, some other time. But so what I decided was I want to implement that process, that is part of the process of outlining, so that when I'm creating the outline, I'm thinking in terms of my scenes, and I'm thinking in terms of the organization and structure of the whole book. And if I'm going to have to renumber things, I'm going to renumber them. I want to get all this out of the way in the outline so that I don't have to do it when I'm writing the book. It's the same work, really. So here's where AI came in. I thought, let's give this a shot. I'm gonna make a run. I'm gonna try using AI to do the outline, and I will shape the outline as I go. So first I said, okay, let's come up with some concepts. I said, pitch me 5 ideas, and I gave it some parameters. And the parameters I gave it were like it had read. My goal was to write something sort of. the same but different when it comes to the book I'm doing with JD. So, it's looked at this, scanned it, and I said, okay, come up with 5 pitches that are kind of in the same vein, not the same sort of story. Here's some elements I want. Here's some things I don't want. Go. So it gave me 5 pitches. And I picked one that I liked, and I said, okay, I like this, but let's change this. Let's do this. Let's rename it this, Made it my own, fed it back in. The AI is kind of a sycophant, so it loved everything I did, praised me for it. I'm an amazing writer. Love that part. So then I said, okay, let's generate an outline. Just give me a kind of an outline. Here's how I want the story to sort of flow and what I want to be sort of the ultimate point, the reveal. And so it did. It gave me an outline. And I said, okay, I'm going to take this. I'm going to give me some time. I'm going to read through this. So I read through the outline. It was okay. I would say I would put it in a sort of 9th grade English level book outline. If you asked a 9th grader to outline a book, maybe one they've read, or maybe a story that they're going to write, I mean, it kind of had that feel. And so I went through the whole thing, bullet by bullet, changed this, took that out, added this in. So I touched and shaped that whole outline. This was just a general outline, not the final outline that I'm going to write from. This was just here are the beats of the story. And I actually did, by the way, ask it to use, I think I had it use the save the cat method, because that was something I was also interested in. It's like, can I have this help me get a better grasp of these different storytelling, plotting methods? And so it did that. And so now that I had that, I took that back in, and I still felt a little iffy about it, but I felt like I had a grasp on where the story should be. And what I did was I started having it give me an outline for each chapter. And I said, look, we're gonna aim for maybe 3 scenes per chapter for now. And just give me, let's do chapter 1. So it did chapter 1. It gave me, based on the new outline I just uploaded, give me chapter 1, and let's outline the scenes. And here's the format I want. I gave it the format I wanted, and so it did. It actually did exactly what I asked. Chapter 1, 1-1, this happens. 1-2, this happens. 1-3. It was acceptable. I reshaped it, rewrote it, fed it back in. Okay, update your memory. Now, based on this that I just uploaded, chapter 1, my version, let's look back at the outline, and now let's do chapter 2. We kept doing that. And I felt like this was going pretty well for a while. But I started noticing at about 8 chapters in, it was starting to fight me. So it implemented this idea that it thought was a great idea for where this story should go, what should happen to a particular character. And it was very, to me, it was very generic. It was very typical, played. The actual word I'm looking for is escaping me right now. You've already thought of it. I can sense it. You already know which word I'm going for, and my brain won't let me come up with it. But I went through the whole thing again, and sort of chastised it. This character is not going to do that, so let's remove that. Don't do that. Then it started, like, every chapter after that, it would reiterate some of that a little. No, it wouldn't. What it would do is, like, kind of go off in a tangent as if it were still thinking about that. But then it would say, you've made it, I'm telling you, it did it exactly like this. You've made it very clear that this is, you do not want this for this character. And so I have made sure that to not include that. And it was this passive aggressive thing that was happening throughout the whole book. And then, so I was already kind of getting to where I'm like, okay, this is not working. But I think we got to around 14 chapters. And what I started noticing was I would change something. Say in chapter 10, it would say, let's just throw something out there. Main character gets kidnapped by the bad guy. And I'd say, no, I don't want that. Main character discovers it as a trap and escapes the bad guy. Okay. And then that's chapter 10. Chapter 11, main character gets captured by the bad guy. No, main character is still eluding the bad guy and does this. Chapter 12, main character is captured by the bad guy. And it was just repeating the same scene over and over again. So we got to about 14 chapters, and I finally hung it up. This method wasn't working. It was helping me ironically, help me get an idea of the shape of the story, but it was nothing at all the way the AI had been taking it. So I scrapped all that. I said, okay, now take all of what we've written, boil it down to just its beats into a brand new outline, chapter, and each chapter has a bullet for each story beat in that chapter, each plot twist, whatever. And it did that. It took a few tries to really get it the way I wanted it, but I got a nice clean outline. Looking through it, I'm like, okay, I can see where this went off the rails. It's just not the story I want to tell. And so I took that outline into my own document, and I started rewriting the outline, but I started expanding it. So I started writing the chapter 1, 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, and up till about chapter 5, I was sticking with some of the bullets that it had given me. These were the things that I had created, really, that I had shaped, and so these were my ideas. And it was around chapter 3 or so, I think, when it started kind of going off the rails a little on its own, and then sort of insisting on things. And so I basically started scrapping everything from there. And so right now, that new outline is sitting at around 8 chapters out of we'll call it a target of about 20. I figure 20 chapters is about average for the type of book I'm working on and the length of it. That's not a hard and fast thing. It's just helping me with kind of being able to measure progress, gauge how I'm going. And I'm still using the AI, but it's not getting any feedback from me on outlines now. I'm not giving it the outline as I go. I'm not doing any of that. What I'm doing instead is popping over to AI and saying, okay, my main character has discovered this artifact, and what I need is a description based on these parameters. And I gave it like a list of things that would apply to this dig site, this chamber. And I said, give me a rundown. Like, what sorts of things would this, based on this and based on it being part of this culture and having these influences, what are some things that my character might see and experience in this place? And so first thing it did was write a scene which was completely off base. And so I said, oh, well, some of this is good. Let's remove this and give this to me as a bullet list. And here's the format I want to use. And what I did was paste in part of my outline as I'd been doing it. And it did exactly what I wanted it to do. But then it took the initiative and did like 2 or 3 more chapters, none of which was usable. And so it gave me the description. I did copy and paste that into my outline, and then I went through and just meticulously reworded everything, because it wasn't quite. There were elements that were very helpful, and then I would ask it, like, tell me more about this, and it would tell me, and then I'd incorporate that. And so that's the process. That's the rhythm I've fallen into with this. As I'm not going to say that AI is just forever going to be terrible at producing an original, authentic story in any format, whether in prose or in outline or whatever. It's getting a lot better. It's gotten a lot better since I first started playing with it. But what I'm discovering, what I'm finding, is that it's much better for me. It fits me better if I'm using it as a sort of sounding board and assistant. It just works better for me. There's no cheating going on. There's no questions of ethics or morals happening. I'm not stealing anyone's work, for sure, because it's all entirely my idea. It's good to have someone at my elbow that I can quickly bounce an idea off of and get some feedback and go do some research for me in 30 seconds instead of 3 hours the way it would take me. And, here's some stuff out of my gumball. Let's put this together. What makes sense? It just helps me to in the way that I always wrote very quickly when I was rapid releasing. It now allows me to ideate very quickly. I always came in with a lot of ideas and a lot of, and ideas kind of just keep buzzing as if I think about this character in this situation with this artifact, this Guga, this, MacGuffin, whatever, and the outcome of that, I'm very good at like keeping that in my head as I go about my day. And I'm very good at the because this happened, that happened idea, which is what you should be doing. Everything in your story should have a because, right? This happened because that happened, not this happened and then that happened. That's terrible storytelling. So everything should have a because. That's a Kevin rule of writing. And as I'm kind of doing this and I'm working with AI as more of a partner rather than doing the work for me, I'm still doing the work, but AI it's kind of like, it's like Iron Man, right? Tony Stark could pick up a coffee table, maybe lift it over his head, depending on what it's made of. But Iron Man, when Tony Stark is wearing this armor, he can lift a car over his head. He can do more. He can do the same thing, but better. That is what AI should be. That's what I think. And the AI is translating this, transcribing this, listening to this, learning from me and growing whatever they're going to do in the future. That's the way I think of it. If I'm wrong, you can let me know. But if you, listener and viewer, have a different idea, we should talk about it. Anyway, so that's my AI outlining story. It would be kind of wonderful if I could say, hey, outline a book for me and I'll go write it. In some ways that would be kind of wonderful, but then maybe I would find that horrific. I probably would. I've had writing partners who've given me outlines and I'm like, this is not good. or this is really good, but it's not me. It doesn't fit my style, or it doesn't fit the kind of stories I like to tell. And so, that's what co-authoring, by the way, is all about. Writing with a partner means that you are compromising and combining styles, but that's always been troublesome for me, and very, very difficult for me. I'm learning, I'm growing in that, and it's growing me as a writer. But that is the same principle at play when I'm using assistive technology like generative AI. If I'm using it to do the work for me, then there's no growth. If I'm using it as a sort of prosthetic that helps me, learn and grow and be better, if I only had one arm, I could probably function and do well. And there's a certain level of activity I could achieve that would be entirely on my own and probably perfectly fine. But if I can get a good enough prosthetic that can now take over additional tasks, I can do more and I can do better. That's the whole point of a prosthetic. If it's going to hamper you and hinder you in some way, then it's not a good prosthetic. It's not a good tool. But if you can use it to grow, you learn how to use the prosthetic. You learn its strengths and its weaknesses. You learn its capabilities, and now you can use that prosthetic to accomplish more. Then it becomes a good tool. There's a synthesis that happens there. You're the gumball at that point, and the prosthetic is one of the things that you picked up while rolling, and now you're synthesizing it to other aspects of your skill and character and capabilities. There we go. All that after just chatting with Marschall about his work and the future of medicine and health and the technologies there. It's good fun. This is good fun. I love talking about this stuff. So if this is a topic you're interested in, let me know. I'm happy to do more episodes on this kind of thing in the future. It seems like the note at the end currently is a whole lot of me talking about what's happening with my writing career and process. Because I am growing and changing some things in this. I've got a whole other approach that I'm attempting with my career. I think I don't know. I just have this feeling that I hit the ceiling on what I'm going to be able to do with my current model, or with the model that was current. And so I'm trying something entirely different now with my approach. I'm aiming for a different type of writing career, and it's happening. I'm seeing it happen, and I think it's going to just continue to grow. And so these little things that I'm learning, these growths that I'm having, we'll call them growth spurts. They're invaluable. I need this to happen, and I'm happy to see it happening. So maybe that's happening for you too, and maybe this is something that can be helpful to you to hear my journey. Look for, by the way, I'm going to be doing an interview with Johnny B. Truant about this kind of thing. I'm going to do, there's one that's happening for Writers Inc. and one that's happening for Wordslinger podcast, and I don't know which one will air first, but be on the lookout for that, because I'm actually interviewing him this afternoon about this. So we're kind of on the same page about sort of the shift in the way the industry is moving and what our careers should look like as a reflection of it. So if you got some questions for Johnny, send them to me. I'll ask him. It won't be for this interview, but maybe next one. So that's it. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you for tuning in to the Wordslinger podcast and for being a loyal listener. Make sure that you are sharing these episodes with people, telling people about this. Hey, I listened to Kevin ramble on about how he uses AI for outlining for 20 minutes or something, and you should listen to I Shouldn't Suffer Alone, or you might get a lot out of it. Make sure that you like and subscribe and all the things that YouTube and others want you to do. I want you to do those as well. And if you'd like to reach out to me, go to wordslingerpodcast.com. That's going to take you to the Substack where I host these now. And you can find ways to contact me there. You can also find lists of my books. If you click on the book page, you can find my Substack, which is the writer _, which is something I regularly, every week I post. That's my newsletter now and my sort of blog and my presence. It's different kind of similar content. You'll get something good out of it, I promise. But make sure you're sharing all that. That helps me grow. And share your story with me too. I can't wait to hear what you're up to. And that's going to do it for this week's Wordslinger podcast. So God bless you. We'll see you next time.